Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our Leadership Talk podcast. My name is Joe Gonzalez, and I'm going to be the co-host for this series of podcasts, of course, for this year. This is a place where we try to understand the importance of leadership. We try to discuss about different traits that a leader should have, and primarily our goal is to help you to grow as a leader. So with us, we have a very dear Apostle Priji.
Thank you, Joe. It's
welcome.
an honor to be here, and I'm sure that all the conversations from Leadership Talk will really equip people to be better leaders at home, in their businesses, in their workplaces, in secular and Christian environments.
Absolutely. In my opinion, like when I was just thinking through this, everybody is a leader, irrespective of whatever role they have, wherever they are. There is a element of leadership that everybody has to portray in their life. So we'll start this as a discussion, Apostle, and see what all we can cover in this course. So to begin with, I was just pondering on this point. There are various things that a leader should have in a character. But if I had to think and imagine if there is one indispensable character, that is like a by default thing for any leader to have in them, what could be that, and your take on that?
I'm sure there are many. There are many indispensable attributes of a leader, but there are some that are actually dispensable. Like, for example, skill sets. You may not have all the skill sets, but it can be developed.
Right.
You may not have all the resources in the world, but you can do with whatever little you have.
Right.
But there are some things which are indispensable. One of the things that I feel that the Lord has been teaching me personally in this season is the importance of courage.
Courage, wow.
Every leader needs to have courage. You cannot have a leader who is timid, who is fearful, who is driven by their circumstances, who is driven by all the problems, and they are purely driven by the need surrounding them. They need to have a sense of understanding, a perspective that comes from who he is.
Right.
Courage is not born because you're able, you're capable. Courage is born because of your identity, knowing who you are, what is it that you're made of, that's what really makes you courageous, or what makes you a timid person, makes you a fearful person. If you don't have your identity in the right place, you will definitely not be able to function in courage. So I think that courage is one of those things that every leader needs to have.
Absolutely.
If you don't take risks, how can you inspire people to do things differently?
Correct.
That's what leaders do, right? They're the ones who are constantly inventing, discovering, they're paving new pathways. They're not following the already charted territories. They are trying to walk through the jungle. They'll be the first person to take the risk and go into the jungle and try something new. And in that process, they do things that now is a role model for others to follow.
Yeah.
But that first trip is going to be very dangerous.
And
you may lose money.
Yeah.
You may, end up losing your life. You may have to fight off some wild beasts in that journey. So if you want to be a leader, you have to learn how to develop courage.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very interesting point. And, when you say it's a journey, at the end of the day, everybody has to go through certain pathways to discover that. To add to that, what could be the source that someone should ideally look for, if especially in the area of courage, because it's different for different people.
Yeah.
I cannot really have a standard way of approach. But what could be the ideal source, if you have to throw some light around that?
See, I already told you something about our identity, that if we have our identity in the right place, if we know who we are, if we know what is our calling, if we understand our own self very well,
correct,
then it is easier to be courageous. It is easier to stay focused and function in that courage. However, our identity cannot be in ourselves. Our identity cannot be in the fact that I'm from this particular family.
True.
Or it cannot be from the fact that I have this particular job, so I may be a very important person, or that I'm so qualified, so I'm, able to make it out there. Our identity is in the voices that we believe. When our parents keep telling us something all through our childhood, that eventually becomes our identity.
True.
Growing up, especially if you're somebody who believes in Jesus, you begin to hear a voice that is greater than the voice of your parents. And then you hear a voice that comes from heaven that tells you, no, you are my beloved son.
Yeah.
You're not a failure. You're not an empty vessel. You're not a nothing. You're not a worm. You're my beloved son, and I'm very well pleased in you.
Correct.
And when your identity is born out of those statements that are spoken to you, that becomes the correct source of, your courage. Otherwise, if you're courageous because you have a big bank balance, or you're courageous because you have a plan B, or you're courageous because you have some influential people to back on, to who will be your backup, who will come running to help you and to, bail you out whenever you land in trouble. If that is the reason why you're courageous, then that is not actually courage. That's not true courage. If your ultimate courage is from the voice that is above you, that is greater than you, that is better than you, who has more potential than you.
Correct.
That is the best source of courage.
Wow.
I like to quote this scripture when I talk about courage. Is there was a transition in leadership in the nation of Israel. There was a man called Moses who was leading the nation for 40 years. And he had just passed away. And now God is appointing in his place a man called Joshua. He is no longer young. He was young when they left from Egypt.
Right.
But he's very inexperienced in terms of leading the nation the way that Moses has led. Moses was the one who did all the miracles. He was the one who valiantly led the people out of Egypt, into the wilderness. And here is Joshua. He's just observed Moses from a distance.
Right.
And God comes to him. First thing he tells him is, be strong and courageous. God is not telling him, you need to be very prayerful. God is not telling him, hey, if you want to be the leader of my people, you need to have so much money. You need to study, so many things and, make sure you get your degree from these colleges. God is not telling him that you need to make sure you have a really good core team. Only then you can be successful. All these other things that we think are, good sources for us to be confident and, for us to be assured that we are going to come out good. God is not giving him all those things. Instead, God is telling him, you need to be strong and you need to be courageous.
Right.
God is saying that is going to be the key.
Correct.
That is going to define your victory, or that is going to be the reason for your failure.
Absolutely.
That if you don't have courage, you're bound to fail. You're bound to run back when you're faced with opposition.
Wow. That's so important. But when we look into this generation, our current generation, we've gotten used to a certain pattern. We're okay with everything that we have, whatever resources we have, it's taken care. But I certainly feel there is this lack of risk-taking ability in the current generation. Like you mentioned at the very first, you need to put that foot front in terms of understanding that this is the right path. I'm sure there are people watching us and listening us who might be at that place where they want to do something courageous, it's just not happening. They have a lot of questions. Is this for me? Is this something that I should do? Is this something that I should step in? If I have to really push them or encourage them just to take that step of faith, to be courageous, how can you? Because I'm coming from a place where I've seen and spoken to people who are in businesses. They have grown to a certain level. They feel they're comfortable. Or that they've grown to a certain position, they feel they're comfortable. But I certainly feel they need to have that little push, a little push in terms of being courageous. how do we go about encouraging those people? I understand the part that you explained, but in practical, in today's world.
I get the practical aspect of it, but I feel that this courage that we are talking about, it is not just talking about boldness, you know. This is bigger than boldness, you know. This is not just about you being excited and enthusiastic. This is something spiritual. It has to come from a very deep place.
Yeah.
That's why I said it has to come from you having heard from a source that is above you.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll give you an example. Peter, you know about Peter, who walked on the water. He took a big risk walking on that water. It didn't come naturally to him.
Yeah.
But then he saw Jesus and he said, wow, Jesus can walk on the water. Second, he said, wait, if Jesus can walk on the water, then I can too. He just saw the source that is above him and he said, wait, if he can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah.
If he is able to, then I am able to. The second thing he said is, wait, but if you will ask me to come, you know, if you will speak a word, if you will give me a blessing, if you will just open your mouth and say, come. You don't have to come hold my hand and help me walk. You just have to say, come.
Right.
If you say, come, then I will also get off my boat and I will walk.
Wow.
And there were 12 people on that boat, you know, all the rest of them comfortably, they're like enjoying the show, watching Jesus walk on the water. Some would have, you know, in our day, they would have taken videos of it and, you know, they are posting on Instagram, look at this person, look at how cool Jesus is. This is the best miracle worker in town. And there was only one guy who took the risk in saying, wait, if Jesus can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
If he is able to and he's somebody above me, then why can't I? So I think that there are two practical elements that we can learn from this. One is learn from the right examples, you know, have the right models, the right people that you would imitate.
Correct.
If you're imitating fearful people all the time, then it is going to be no surprise that you're going to be fearful in all of your decisions, your choices, your mannerisms, the way you do marriage, the way you do life. It is all going to be very fearful. But if you're going to be imitating somebody who is an expert in walking on the water, who loves taking risks, if you have a good leader yourself, if you're following a courageous leader, automatically you will have a framework to walk in courage. And second is the need or the importance for that blessing. Peter said, if you will say come, then I will step out. So either you need the voice of God, you know, if you need to have that voice that says, okay, go ahead, do it. Or else you need the voice of your leader that says, okay, take the risk, go ahead and jump. You know, like,
isn't this like a very thin line between being courageous and being foolish? Like, I'm thinking from Peter's point of view, like that would have been his mindset, right? But I'm glad that he took that step and you know, he actually went for it.
I think that the place where we become foolish is we see Peter doing it and then we get excited and we also jump off the boat. Without having our eyes on Jesus, without having heard from Jesus, come. Peter heard the word come.
That was his revelation.
That was his revelation. He asked for it. He demanded for it. He received it and he walked. But then if I say, wow, look at this, Peter could do it, you know, let me also, you know, try my hand at it. I think that's the thing that Pharaoh and the Egyptians did. They saw that Moses and the Israelites could walk through the Red Sea. So they were like, okay, they can do it, let's also do it. You know, they tried being courageous, but that was the most foolish decision because God had not given them the grace to walk through that sea.
Absolutely.
So the question is, are you being inspired from the right source? Is your courage coming from the right source? Because if your courage is coming from very material things or external things or just momentary things, you know, just because somebody else is making more money and, you know, somebody came and inspired you about, you know, trying out this new thing and, you know, new model of ministry and you're like, oh, wow, you know, Hillsong does it like this, Bethel does it like this, why can't we try it like that? You know, something that we do in our church is we distribute Bibles. And that's not because we have seen any churches in our city do it. That's not even because we've seen a lot of results in doing so. It is because we've heard God tell us.
Right.
We were in a season of fasting and we were seeking God for strategies. And there's something that specifically God gave us as an instruction for our church that we need to do this. And so today we don't care if anybody else is doing it or not. We don't care if people like it or not. But as a principle, we print Bibles, we make sure to give away Bibles, because the purpose of doing that was having heard from God. So that gives us the drive and the motivation. And so sometimes we overstretch our church budget in doing that. We take risks in doing, these things. And that's okay, because we've heard from God, that the source has to be correct.
Right.
If we are just doing it to imitate another church, then even if we are successful, it may be a very foolish thing to do.
Right. So true. So true. While you're saying all of this, and I'm just trying to put this in line as a question. You need to be inspired, as you rightly said. You have to hear it from above. So my question to add to that is, can this be a contagious thing? Like, to be courageous, like, can I just put down my courage and inspire someone else? Like,
absolutely,
in any walks of their life.
For sure. I think courage is contagious, and so is fear. Courage is something that can inspire people, and so can fear. Right. Fear can also inspire people. I'll give you the example of David and Goliath.
Yeah.
The Bible says David, he went into this battlefield where there are thousands of people, thousands of, soldiers, and all of them are timid. All of them are waiting in the shadows. They are all scared to death. Nobody wants to take that first step. The Bible says David went and brought Goliath down. And immediately the entire army rose up and charged at the Philistines.
Yeah.
And they pursued them to the gates of the Philistine cities and even overtook some of those cities.
True.
Wait a minute, this is the same guys who were sitting there
doing nothing
for all these days. But one act of courage by one David just inspired so many of these guys who thought that they don't have the capacity to overcome these Philistines. They immediately became courageous. So in the same way, fear is contagious. So if that's why I began by saying you need to be careful who you hang out with, who you're imitating. You need to be careful who are the people that are, speaking into your life, who are the people that have access and influence into, your way of doing things.
Wow.
And if you are going to be imitating fearful people, if you're going to be surrounded by fearful people, immediately you will see that everything begins to bring panic into your head.
Yeah.
Everything creates problems. Everything creates, a big scenario. Smallest of things will be like a big scenario in your head.
Yeah.
But if you walk with people that are courageous, I'm telling you, a mountain will look nothing to you. You can walk at a mountain and say, I'm going to take down this mountain. And that's what Caleb did. He was some 80-year-old, if I'm not wrong, when he went to Joshua and said, just say a word. You're the leader, you're my leader. He didn't even say, if God speaks, I'll pray, fast, nothing. He said, Joshua, you say the word. If you say, I'm going to go take down this mountain. Wow. I'm going to capture this place. That became later known as Hebron. That's the courage with which, this guy went and spoke. He said, just say the word. And I'm going to take down this place,
This is like an eye-opener, even to think like we have the capacity to inspire a generation to be courageous, and just imagine the outcome of what it could be. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. We are just coming out of a pandemic where fear was, constantly taught. Fear was legalized.
Yeah.
Fear was infused from every direction. Even in the church, people were just telling you again and again how you need to protect yourself and do this and do that. So something that we decided in church is we do realize the reality of the sickness and the disease, but we said we'll not talk about it in the church. We refuse to even name it in the church. When not because it was not serious.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't want to give
Any
more
importance,
voice to that fear, because the more we emphasize how big the problem is, the more it will have authority. It will stop us from fulfilling what God has called us to do.
Right. Wow. Now coming to this point, like there is oftentimes that we are courageous and we take these decisions. Not always comes through the way that we want to see. The outcome is not what we actually expected.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking this from my personal experience, that I know somebody that I'm speaking to that they ventured into a business, put everything that they had, every savings, every penny, they took loans. In my opinion, that was a very courageous decision into getting into something different they want to do. But few months in the line, everything just didn't go their way. They, at this point of time, they feel like they've failed everything what they have tried. So they were courageous, in terms of taking that decision, but they didn't see the result. And I'm assuming that this is common with everyone.
Yeah.
It's easy to get discouraged at that point in time. How do we approach that situation and pull up someone from that place? And I don't want to just say that, hey, go take another courageous decision. That'll be like probably not the right approach, but how do we help them?
See, I'll tell you this. There are two aspects to making decisions. One is the passion, and second is the plan. Now, courage, it falls under the passion part. We all need that passion.
True.
We all need that drive, that risk factor.
Right.
But some of us, we have that, and we lack the plan. We lack the planning part.
Right.
We lack the part where we are sitting down to strategize, counting the cost. Jesus said, who will go into the war but not count the cost? That you have to pay a price.
True.
On the other hand, some of us, we are counting the cost so much that we fail to, take the risk. We fail to do something about what is given to us. Both sides of the coin is dangerous. So if we are only being courageous, but there's absolutely no planning, no counseling we are receiving, no help, perspective, understanding we are receiving, then it's a problem.
Right.
On the other hand, if we are constantly fearful of losing our investment and not investing, not taking that risk.
Okay.
I'll tell you this story that Jesus shared in Matthew 25. He said there was a guy who gave 5 talents to one, 2 talents to one, and 1 talent to the third. At the end of the day, when these guys, did business with it and came back, the Bible says that the guy with 1 talent, he came to his master and said, I was afraid I'm going to lose this 1 talent. The master was like, how dare you think like that? If you had just invested this into the bank, at least I would have gotten interest on it. And the crazy thing is, Jesus, or the master in that story, he says, cast this servant into outer darkness. Like, throw him into the hell, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, I can understand if Jesus says, hey, wait, you will lose your reward. You lose the opportunity to do business. But the lack of courage that this guy had cost him his eternity. Like, this guy went into hell. It's not like he lost that 1 coin or that 1 talent. Like, I can understand Jesus saying, hey, I entrusted you with something, you misused it or you lost it. No, he didn't lose it. He brought back that. He still had that one. But he was not courageous enough to invest that 1 talent like the other 2.
As you said. There was no plan, as you said.
There was no plan and there was no passion. And he just, hid it, and he just kept it, and he just returned it back to Jesus. And that can be very dangerous. Now, I understand that some of us may be like deeply hurt because of taking courageous decisions and it not working out. Like, for example, a relationship that you stepped into. You thought this is the girl I'll get married to. You thought that this is going to work out perfectly well. And right now it doesn't look like, it's all adding up. You're married and you have children, and you're looking at all of this and said, I did take a courageous decision. but where is this going? It doesn't seem to be working out the way that I thought it will work out. I understand if you've, invested into a business and it's all, going wasted. I understand if you've tried applying to go to a particular country and you've put all your savings into doing it and, nothing good came out of it. I also want to speak to the ones that are discouraged,
Right.
I'm going to tell you to not stop taking risks.
Wow.
Because one of the biggest reasons for courage to be drained out of our life is past failures.
Yeah.
And if I have failed, for example, somebody who has failed in the area of business, he will never want to venture into business himself. I speak to children whose parents have failed in the business
yeah.
in the past. And they are like forever reluctant to ever venture out into full-time business. They don't mind doing a part-time business,
Right.
but they don't want to ever do business full-time. The children of pastors, I ask them, would you want to do ministry? They're like, no, because they've seen the sacrifices that their parents have had to make and all the challenges and the ups and the downs. And they're like, no, we'll never be pastors. We will do anything but be full-time ministers. And so I feel like sometimes the areas where we are hurt and where we have seen failures or observed the challenges, it's very hard to take risks in those same field. For example, if you ask Peter to walk on the water, he has two options. He can remember the fact that he sank when he tried walking on the water, or he can remember the fact that Jesus was still faithful even when he sank.
Yeah.
So he can either say, wait, I am still going to take the risk and walk on the water, or he can say, I'm never trying this again. So it's all a matter of perspective, knowing that even if you have to sink, Jesus is still there.
True.
Holding your hand, bringing you out.
Wow.
He is still the one that is going to help you. Just because you heard from Jesus, just because Jesus is your example, doesn't mean you will not sink. Peter sank.
Yeah.
He
did.
He sank.
Yeah.
He got scared. He lost his courage, and there was a moment where he would have drowned in that waves.
Yeah.
But the beautiful fact is that you survived. Jesus was with you.
True.
So now your testimony can no longer be that I sank. Your testimony has to be that Jesus was still faithful.
Yeah.
Even when I was sinking, he was faithful. Even when I was bankrupt, he was still faithful. Even when I was betrayed and isolated and, left alone, in my pursuit of a good life partner, he was God, Jesus. He was still faithful.
Wow.
Even when I thought I will not make it in business, in career, he was still faithful. And if that is not enough a reason for us to be healed and for us to begin to trust again, for us to begin to make risks again, then I think that we will never be able to, find hope
Absolutely.
to make those risky steps. So I really feel that when it comes to leadership, if you want to be a leader, courage has to be part and parcel of every decision you take, everything you do. You have to step into zones where other people have not stepped into.
Right.
But not just for the sake of doing it, not just for the sake of, I've not walked on the water, so let me try walking on the water. But because you see somebody else, who's leading you there. Absolutely. Because you hear a voice that says, come.
Wow.
Nothing else. Jesus didn't give him strategy. Jesus didn't say, oh, don't worry, the water density is this much, there is salt in the water, so it will hold you up. Nothing, no explanation. Just a word that says, come, and Peter stepped out.
Wow. Well, this is really interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
We should do this more often.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that we are also doing video this time.
Yes, that's a new format that we're trying
That's a new format, and
which is good.
we really believe that these conversations bring out some bit of inspiration and help to our people that are listening.
I'm hoping that everybody who's listening us and watching us, have been blessed with this conversation. We would really like to understand. If you have questions or if you have anything that you want to know on this topic or any other topic that you feel like that we should discuss on this podcast, I would request you to send us a note at info@pastorpriji.com. Also, if you feel like you need to be mentored by Pastor Priji, reach out to us, write to us, or if you're based in a different location, we can help you to find out a mentor in your location itself. So that's it for today. Well, thank you so much.
We are excited to hear from you, and we are hoping that you will subscribe to this podcast and you would share the word about this podcast to your friends as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Apostle.
Thank you, Pastor Jojo.
God bless you, everyone.